Welcome to the Basic Income Show. I'm your host, Scott Santens, and I'm here with my friends and co-hosts, Conrad Shaw and Josh Worth. And if you're not familiar with the show, we cover the latest developments in the world of universal basic income. So, yeah, what do you guys want to talk about this week? I think
What? You you're the one who tells us what we're gonna talk about. What do we wanna talk about? I mean, sometimes I have something, but
yeah, all right. Well, the first thing I would like to talk about
yeah.
then is the big news out of Ireland. So, we covered this last week a little bit, just about the latest report from the Basic Income for Artists pilot in Ireland. And between when we recorded that and now, they did a public consultation to see what the public thought of the program and if they should make it permanent. 97%, there was 97% support for making it permanent. And so they went ahead and decided to do that. They announced it just this week and made it official yesterday. And yeah, so for those who don't know, this was a 3-year pilot where they provided 2,000 artists with €325 a week for 3 years. And yeah, it went great. All sorts of positive impacts. We covered those in last show, so you can check those out. But for what they're planning on doing, it seems like, is they'll welcome another 2,000 artists and they'll slightly expand what it means, like to be an artist. So to qualify, it'll expand that circle so more people can apply for it. They'll randomly choose 2,000 artists. And what I'm not sure of, it says that they're planning on like mirroring it. So it could be that they'll do 2,000 artists every 3 years, or also they could grow it slightly each time too. So they're already discussing that it might have 2,200 artists this time around. So kind of like growing it at maybe 10% each time. But yeah, I'm not sure yet in regards to like the exact details of the permanent
Right.
program.
I mean, my curiosity would always be, like, clearly there's more than 2,000 artists in the country of Ireland. Like, is there, like, beyond doing it again, or is there, like, a plan to expand it into, you know, a bigger program to be less of a lottery? Because that, I mean, that's maybe on the path to more universality too. But if you're still just getting such a small percentage of even the artist population, I want to see it grow. I don't want to see him just do it again. Like, these are demonstrations.
Yeah, well, they only have a certain amount of funding for the arts, and they've decided that, some percentage of that is best to be done in this way to just like directly support artists unconditionally with this weekly payment. And so, yeah, I mean, it all depends on if they can somehow, allocate more funding, which I think maybe there could be a story for that, as in, they keep going the program, they grow it a little bit more, they welcome some more artists, and maybe they look at this compared to the other funding that they're doing. They're thinking, you know what, we should actually go with like 4,000 artists or 5,000 or whatever. I can't remember the number. I'd have to look it up, but I think there were like almost 10,000 applicants last time around. It could have been a lot more than that. I don't remember for sure. But I think it was that. So maybe around there is what it could potentially be to like reach all the artists, and of
I
course by
I would,
defined.
if it got press, I would guess they get a lot more applicants this time. Like, the
Sure, you'd also
first
have
time
people
around.
who aren't artists.
Well, and also
You
the
know,
people who didn't know about it the first time. Like, that's probably a lot of people. And then 3 years go
yeah,
by and you hear about these artists getting money. It's like, damn, I missed that boat.
yeah.
I
But I
kind
think
of
this
like
is
this idea of like, you mentioned that people that aren't artists might like sign up for it and like try to convince people that they're artists. But there's something about that that's kind of interesting
yeah,
because it's encouraging people to like think of themselves as artists, even if it's just to get to, scam their way into this money. Like, you kind of like you put that's actually kind of the first part about being an artist is you have
a
to
scam
think of
artist.
yourself. Yeah, you have to think of yourself as that before you can like really pursue what it is you're trying to do. And so like the side effect is that people will be labeling themselves as
Yeah.
artists who maybe weren't to begin with, right?
Does it go?
So yeah,
Yeah.
you're transitioning from scam artists to actual artists.
Does it go less in? Is it a less dystopian thing to like turn work requirements into art requirements? Like, show us your artworks.
I mean, that's perfect,
Right.
right? That's sort of what we want in a
We'll
society.
just do a little
really.
doodle.
We've got creative, innovative people coming out.
No, resist the urge.
woodwork.
Resist. Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. And, it does remind me though, this topic of one of the things I guess I actually do want to talk about, which is this new thing Josh built, which is this. We always talk about the horse race for the different countries and who's the closest. And it feels like this could be, I don't know if the kinks are worked out enough yet, if we want to share it yet or whatever, but like it could be the new, like, what's our
I
take?
have it set up to share.
Yeah, I mean, every time there's news, that's always a question is like, who's the closest? So it could be just like our take on the horse race every week. It's sort of like an enter it yourself / maybe ask AI to help if you want thing. But the thing I would want to know is like compared to last week, did Ireland move up significantly? Does this get them? Does this increase their
I
odds?
think they should
of a
definitely
full-blown?
move ahead. I guess maybe we need to like show where they
Alright.
were last week too, to see if they've gone ahead.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to start logging all of these things, and so we can show the progress. So we can show it as eventually we can show it as video over time of the actual horse race. And this
Mhm.
metaphor
Yeah.
came from like at the carnival when you're shooting the water gun at the little hole and you're trying to get your horse to the end. It's like that's what it's always felt like which country's going to get to UBI first. Yeah. So this is in that vein.
All right, here we go. Place your
Take it away.
bets. And
Gosh.
Oh, come on.
it does look like
Come on,
Ireland
USA.
is in the lead
Ooh.
now.
Barely edging out South Africa. And yeah, eventually we've talked about like having reasons behind these things. So there's in the guts of this, you can put in your own estimates. You can ask AI to come up with estimates based on whatever the hell it wants to factor in. What's the math of it, Josh?
How is it weighted? I think it's 50-50 weighted. So
But like
just
what?
taking
How far something is down how big the bar is?
It is arbitrary. We're making this up as we go. So this is mostly Scott putting in what he thinks based on his knowledge and then asking ChatGPT to give its take. But yeah, the weird thing that we ran into is that Scott's ChatGPT gave different numbers than mine did. So when I was first setting it up, I was just like, okay, whatever, put something in there. And it was like very optimistic and it had these very it was not that smart about how it did it, which is kind of this weird side effect that we figured out that is we're both asking ChatGPT for facts, right? And the facts that we get back are based on what we have done in the past through our own conversation. So it's actually tailoring facts. I wouldn't call them facts, but it's tailoring information based on who we are. So it's a weird thing that's happening that I don't think people really quite get the extent that could be creating more and more isolated bubbles of knowledge that, if we're relying on these machines to give us our knowledge,
These things are so
we've got
not
our
accurate,
yeah,
too.
we've also got our own little
they're
bubbles that
helpful,
we're creating.
but geez.
No,
One of the things with the odds, it when you asked me to ask my ChatGPT just for some odds for these various countries, it listed it, and then I double checked with each of them. I said, well, are you considering this? Are you considering this? Are you considering this? And it came back to me with South Korea when I asked about South Korea. Are you considering the fact that the new president actually ran on UBI back on the previous election? And it responded that that person, Lee Mae-jung, is not the president of South Korea. And, he was beaten by, the guy who's beaten by. It was like, wait, you need to update this because you're going off
the
old
knowledge
news.
base goes back to it's usually a year behind.
Right. Make sure you access the internet.
If we're going to do this as a thing, my inclination is we just turn off the AI weighting and have this just be Scott's latest predictions. But my question was, if you pull up the chart again, it's basically how to read it. Essentially, what does the length of the bar mean? Like if Ireland was just ahead of South Africa, does that mean it's going to get there just before, or is it more of an odds thing, right? So I think it was more of like
I think
for
it's
each
odds, yeah.
country, it was like, what are the odds that it has a basic income, in the next year, in the next 5 years?
No,
Like
which one
0
will
to
be the
100?
first? Who's going to be the first?
Right, because a solid 1 means you already have it, and a 0 means that you are never going to get it.
So
And then
should
yeah, it combines those odds. And so the AI odds were pretty low, and then I made my odds like very high, like optimistic as in regards to like who could get there first.
but
And then the result of it is this kind of like halfway.
but shouldn't the odds add up to 1 then, if that's the case? Like 2 of them looked like they were at 70%, which means if they both have a 70% chance of being
No.
first, right?
No, I don't. You wouldn't say that the U.S.'s odds of getting basic income depend on every other country.
So yeah,
It has a 50%
Yeah,
chance.
we're
Another
going to
country
have
has
to
50%
study
chance.
like
Another one
horse
has a 50%
betting to
chance.
really
That-
figure out how this works. But when you pick your odds, like it's always just an expert that knows something about how fast a horse is. And it's like a
Right.
group of experts determine the odds. And that's just like how much you get. If you were to bet on it, how much you're going to get back.
Well, I think
So
that
Right.
you get less back because you're betting on like a more likely scenario.
right. I think that's a key point, though, is the language there. Are we saying this is the odds of it happening first for each country, or is this the odds of it happening within the next X number of years at all? Like, I think those are both different numbers, and it feels like the second one is more what we're talking about, like that country's individual odds of enacting a UBI rather than whether or not it's going to be first. Because whether or not it's going to be first, I think those odds should add to 1 or less.
Well, we're getting pretty particular about our horse race here,
is
but
there
you're probably
We
right.
just
yeah.
made
Yeah.
this, Conrad.
I know, I wanted-
Josh made it.
I want it to be the ultimate source of truth,
Right. Yeah. We.
or just understand. Either way, it'll be
It
fun
is
to watch.
It
Like
is a
who's in-
magic 8-ball. It is a fun magic 8-ball.
We can
to play
start
with.
taking bets on it. Like if we actually want to create our own little betting pool. I mean, that's an idea. We could actually like fund basic income through betting on who will get it first. Just start making it a lottery.
If you did
Will
this
we
like
get there first?
But if you did this like racehorse betting, that would be terrible wagers for anyone who's betting on it because you're giving everything high odds, and so the low return on the risk. Like the house is
just so
gonna
close.
we're just gonna mop up everyone's money because.
And also, I mean, we're only including like the countries most likely to, so like there's a lot of countries that aren't even listed here because those are some really bad odds. And yeah, you could bet on that. That's like practically 0. That's
Right.
Can we see the chart again and maybe like do a little recap? That might be a way to just kind of go over latest developments, I guess. If we really did see Ireland pulling ahead, is there anybody else that we want to talk about right now?
Yeah, like just a quick rundown of like why things are near the front or near the back and what used to be. Scott, you should embrace this. This is going to be a big part of your personality moving forward. Is this horse race thing? You're going to be
The
known
bookie,
for it.
the UBI bookie.
it's purely for fun.
Here we go.
Entertainment purposes only, everybody.
That's right.
Is this still including ChatGPT, or do we take it out entirely?
No, it's always going to be the same, and it always uses the same numbers as long as they are unchanged. So no, the numbers haven't been changed since the last run. I think it could be fun to add like a bit of randomness to it. So then actually the race does change a little bit each time, but it still incorporates the numbers just to like, because it's fair chance. The chance is part of this anyways. So it could be an interesting third column of randomness.
So what I'm saying is take out all the randomness, turn off the weighting of AI, and just make you do it every week.
Yeah, no, I don't want to.
That's
do
pretty
that.
much what it is.
I definitely have no interest in doing this every week. No way.
Or, well, we only do it every 2 weeks, I guess. So
No, still no.
do you
No,
agree with this
for
assessment?
fun.
Do you agree with or would you put someone
So
else in first?
It's his assessment.
I mean, the AI, I don't think it's too far out there just because, it's all just guesswork anyways. But Ireland, I think I bumped up Ireland a bit just because, they are the first country now to actually run a pilot and then said, hey, we should keep this. So even though it's not a universal basic income, they did run a pilot and they listened to the results and they said, let's make this permanent. So good for them. And I think that bodes well, but we'll see. And then South Africa, they're up there too because, and we've talked this multiple times, they've got their pandemic payment still in place, and there's a real push to make that permanent and make it a universal basic income grant. And so each year they kind of kick that can down the road, and they're at that point again where it's either going to get kicked down the road for another year, or they're actually going to do something on a permanent basis. And so that's why it's up there. It's looking good realistically, with so much pressure and the politicians being in support of it and everything. South Korea also, I think like there's a good chance there.
Well, so is this right that Ireland is the only place with like any form of permanent direct cash as part of their
Well,
financial program?
let's say I don't know, maybe
I guess you could count Alaska probably, but
yeah,
that's
but
not in
like the
the
thing
whole
that's
nation.
special about the Ireland thing is it's not uncommon, to senior pensions are very common, child allowances are very common. So what's uncommon are programs that are unconditional cash that have nothing to do with either like college to like for students, and that they can actually keep in addition to whatever else.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's special in that regard. Even though it's only for artists, I think it's special and that it's something different. There's, nothing else that's really doing that.
There's
It's interesting because if you think of it in terms of like what is the work requirement, like that's another part of like why it's different, because there's no actual work requirement, but there's
Right.
there's like an implied work requirement that you're required to keep making art in some way, and even if you didn't, but it's still like the assumption is that you probably will.
But you could have
Yeah.
spent the entire 3 years actually making one project. It could have been like, your big grand masterpiece.
who spends
And,
that
it's not
long
like
on a project? That would be
Yeah.
ridiculous.
right.
Yeah.
When it comes to Conrad, now it's only like a third of the time that it takes to
I'm going to
do.
need at least 10 years.
Mhm.
Can you scroll down a little so we can just see what's on the bottom axis? It's getting cut off on the screen.
The bottom axis?
Oh,
Yeah, there's nothing.
there is
It's
no
just
axis.
it's just
Okay.
a race.
Is there anything that stands out as like overweighted? Like, is
All right,
China
we can
really
see
that?
the
Is China
date.
Oh, yeah.
well?
So here are the AI odds, and you can see there.
I mean, you can just enter those too. You could make those
Yeah,
Conrad
I
odds
just
if you want to.
I entered those. I entered the new AI odds for me and
Yeah.
overwrote what you had in there. And then
Mhm.
I adjusted all the expert odds, and I basically set it all at 0.9, and then I just went up a little bit and down a little bit to kind of just create a little bit of
Mhm.
hierarchy, like ranking, instead of like coming up with numbers.
Right.
Because the numbers are just pulling them straight out of my butt.
I would say either set all the AI to 0 or set it to whatever you said. I want to point out Jay in the comments who says you guys will make it happen in the U.S. first. I will take that bet. Jay's a good friend. He's a little of a biased point of view, but I won't get into why. But good to see you here, Jay.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. We doing our best for sure. All right. Anything else you wanted to cover about that? Any other countries or anything?
Unless there's anything else that stands out as like, ooh, this one's way off. Otherwise, it looks like my big takeaway is all 10 of those or whatever of those things are all like, it's a pretty close race. It's kind of neck and neck at about the midway point. No one's like that close. No one's like doing nothing. Like there's a bunch of countries making, I guess that would mean to me, some sort of significant steps in the direction.
Yeah, and like so I wanted to make sure China is in there, even though there's like nothing coming out of China about this. And like the odds of them doing a full unconditional cash program is pretty low. But at the same time, they do really want to create, their own consumption class like we have here in the US. They want like a strong middle class to buy stuff, and they don't have that. So, and if they decide to do that, then it's just instant. They would just go from not talking about UBI to having it next week. So when it comes to the randomness potential of China, um, I don't know. That's one of those things where if we had like a column of odds of randomness, I think China would need to be like somehow there needs to be more swing involved
It
with
feels like
China.
they get a boost for being less of a democracy. Like they could do it much more quickly.
Right. Or they could be last.
And
But,
then I think
yeah.
it's going to get interesting when we get to the point where someone implements a UBI and we're like, that's not a UBI. We'll put you up at 80%. But like,
Right.
where's
Right.
the,
Like,
it has work conditions. So no, you don't get to say you won.
yeah, like, so in South Africa, they're talking about their basic income grant. And what that would do is provide only to unemployed people. And they have, a lot of unemployed people. So it would actually go to, I think, like 30% of the country or something like that. And then, the rest of the country already has or like the seniors and kids already have this. But like when you look at adults, it would cover a lot of adults. And they want to build towards universality. And I would think that even, if they launched that, it would certainly improve their odds of UBI, I think. But yeah, it wouldn't be UBI. And maybe some press outlets would be saying, South Africa has UBI now. And we'd have to say, no, they have the kind of an unconditional unemployment program kind of thing where it's good. It's
And
better
nobody
than not
would get
having
the
it.
message. Like Jay would know. And our other, maybe 100 people see the video. But everyone else would be like, see, UBI exists now. We can all
Right.
pack up and go home. Yeah.
Every viewer of our show would know the truth. Everyone
They
else would be
wouldn't win the
clueless.
Derby. They wouldn't get like the little flower thing that they put around their neck, the laurels from us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like with Thailand too, like if they actually did a negative income tax, then that would be amazing, but it's still not UBI. And then we'd be arguing, like, well, they kind of do it, but no, they don't. Like you could argue that, and I would enjoy having that argument. It's like, well, if they have a negative income tax with a 40% phase out rate, then they can say, well, it's the same thing as a UBI with a 40% flat tax. So we did it. Thailand wins.
It's interesting to me. So one of the stories that we covered, we learned something about like Lakota people in South Dakota that were working on sovereignty stuff, and they were creating their own nation. Really, they were like establishing it to be recognized, meaning like own license plates, own driver's licenses, and everything. Like you cops that aren't, reservation cops have no authority, all that kind of stuff. And they got to the point where they got it recognized by the UN, and this whole process was like it's similarly daunting to like any of the stuff that we're talking about trying to do here. Is like, how do you create your own nation within another nation and get it recognized? Why I bring that up is because maybe there's a path we can learn from to establish the nation of commingle, in which case every member is a citizen, in which case we could be the first nation to implement a basic income.
Yeah, I don't advise getting into the sovereign citizen territory.
I'm just saying,
Like,
hypothetically,
that's really getting into crazy land.
if we wanted that horse laurel, we could maybe go that route.
Yeah, I don't think
I
so.
mean, I think it does like raise the question of like, what does it mean to even be a nation? Like, and if the basic, framework is that you just collect money and spend it properly, then it's a micronation, which micronations I think are very fun.
A nation,
People that have like set up nations in their bedroom and like created their own flag and currency.
we have.
So that's fun stuff. So I think that's closer to what we're talking about.
I mean, I don't
thinking
really know what a nation is besides a shared story between people. It has less to do with borders for me. Like, I'm not saying, I don't want anti-open borders trolls to come at me. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like what really makes a nation is a bunch of people deciding that we are all in the same nation together. Nations can grow or shrink. They can be whatever size. It's less about like where the ocean hits it, and it's more about, it really is just a shared story. So if you tell that story and enough people believe it, then you're a nation.
Yeah, and if you draw the border around the people that have, created a membership on our platform, then yeah, it definitely works. But it's
You're gonna have the commingled military too.
Yeah, right. We will.
We're putting it off for the medium term objective.
Right.
I mean, yeah. Well, we have to.
I mean, that's kind of what happens in the digital world. Like you're creating like security. We've got security. So it's a very close metaphor to what a real nation is.
Okay, so the next thing I wanted to cover is this came out of the UK, and it was 7 key narratives for basic income. Authors George Bolton, Cleo Goodman, Jack Cullen, and I think they did a really good job with this. Did you happen to check this out at all, Conrad? Did you see it?
No, No.
So they just wanted to focus on 7 key narratives. So it starts out just executive summary. It's just
What
what
org
is
again
basic
was
income.
put this together?
This is the Autonomy Institute,
It's an interesting name for the thing. Okay.
and it just points out that narratives are really important. So yeah, so here are the 7 key narratives that they wanted to focus on. So 1, basic income is good for the economy. I'll zoom in a bit so you can see. Extensive trials and studies consistently show that basic income does not discourage work. Recipients remain in employment or engage in productive activities like caregiving, education, or entrepreneurship, contributing positively to the economy. By addressing the root causes of unemployment, such as poor mental health and physical health, basic income helps create a healthier, more productive workforce. This in turn reduces reliance on welfare and healthcare systems, and providing a stable financial foundation fosters economic stability and sustainable growth, stimulating local economies and supporting small businesses without causing inflationary pressures.
Yep. I
And as
think
far as like the first thing, like that's a great one. Like,
yeah.
literally, it's good for the economy.
I think a good thing to always do is to acknowledge the caveats in any one of these things so that you gain credibility with potential opposition, where the big caveat I'd point out on this is the amount of the basic income and the design of it does matter. And like a $50 a month basic income versus a $50,000 a month basic income are clearly not going to have the same effects on the economy, right? So then that argument goes back and forth. When I built the UBI calculator, I sort of limited how big it could go so as not to like do things that I couldn't justify predicting wouldn't impact the economy. Like I think a lot of people, if they, all of a sudden it's like, oh, you get $60K a year, I think maybe a lot of people do withdraw. I think we have to like find out at
Sure.
scale.
It's just, yeah. I mean, we're getting into, and there's certainly a bad understanding of what basic income is from people when, they say, oh, well, my basic needs are $5,000 per month. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what a basic income is. It's like, well, no. I mean, like, I think you do a really good job in Bootstraps of describing what UBI is when you say that, basic is just the base. It's what you start with and you build on top of it with this, other income that you get. It's just the starting amount of income. And when people think of, basic as it has to be really tiny or because I need this much, it needs to be really large or whatever, like it's confusing and frustrating because I think for the most part, there's just an understanding that when you're talking about basic income, you're talking like around poverty line. It's not part of the definition. It doesn't have to be that.
Right.
But I think most people just assume, yeah, basic income. That's like just you lift people out of poverty.
Yeah. And
That's what it is.
That's a great place to start. There are a lot of advocates that go straight to like, oh, it needs to be $5,000 a month.
Sure.
Not a
And
lot,
that's
but
like
some.
yeah.
And it's an easy way to get discredited because one of the disingenuous responses from opposition is like, why not $1 million a month? And it's just like for obvious
Right.
reasons. So I think a really smart approach is like the way I viewed it with the calculator is like I feel like up to the poverty line, we can pretty easily justify that there probably won't be a lot of labor market withdrawal except for good reasons that we want, and it will be beneficial to the economy. And from there, we can grow it to find out when it starts like not being so. But there's like a whole strategy behind it rather than just saying all money is good and all not money is bad or whatever.
Yeah. But I mean, it's true to say the basic income is good for the economy from the understanding the basic income is a small amount.
Yeah.
Like it is small as in poverty. It's not like if someone reads this and says basic income is good for the economy and they're thinking it's $1 million a month, like they just don't even understand what basic income
Right.
is.
Yeah.
I wonder if they even qualified that here at the beginning.
It doesn't look like it's talking much about an amount. And that is a sticking point for a lot of people. So if we make the definition like starting relatively small, then yeah, it's good for the economy. But there's also on the other side, if it's way too small and it's replacing things so that like some people, like the people at the bottom are worse off, then that's also like all of these things have to be not taken in like a vacuum or not taken to the extreme is all. It's just worth mentioning when you're talking to someone so they can't, it's about not being dismissed easily by a
Yeah, I think
disingenuous
maybe what you're
argument.
saying is there's a missing narrative if you're going to be listing narratives, and that's like what they list at the top, which is what is it even, right? Like you actually need to define what you're talking about. Like that's a missing narrative right now. So, but I think
Right.
once you establish that, then this
Right. And that is a big part of the through line of like, if we get a captive audience for, 10 episodes or 15 episodes or whatever for Bootstraps, I want to make sure that that comes through in like a holistic and measured way. And that was a big focus on that episode you saw, was like really sort of like a lot of the people that even I'm working with, like, are not as steeped in like the debate over the last however many years as me, and really fighting to make the point that it is a baseline rather than basic meaning the amount. Like, a lot of people have taken it to mean that basic is means it's enough for your basic needs, which that launches us into that forever arguments. Like, the way we're positioning in that is not like really heavy-handed, but it's really trying to reframe people's original understanding of a basic income as like it is this mechanism of a floor. It's not like talking about how much you should need for your basic needs.
Yeah, I think we're getting way into the weeds on this when
Well, we got
the entire point,
6 more.
the entire point of this report is just 7 key things. And
Okay,
first thing being it's good for the
just see what they
economy.
are.
And that's a
Okay.
true statement. It is good for the economy.
Mhm.
And that's what so many people just don't even, like, you don't think about that. You
Mhm.
think, oh, well, people are going to work less, so that's bad for the economy. There's going to be less stuff because there's going to be less people working. That's bad for the economy. And, like we know from Alaska, where people have this and had it for over 40 years, that spending the money is actually great for the economy. That actually stimulates the Alaskan economy. It grows their GDP, and people actually work more total because of it. So, as like a messaging saying, look, it's good for the economy, then I think that's an important
Yeah.
key narrative. I agree with that.
And it lets you tie into some of the like the more common wisdom phrases that are actually I agree with, which are like, it takes money to make money. So if you have a lot of people in your community that have no money, they can't make money with it, right?
Right.
They
That's bad for the economy.
so they can't start businesses. They can't they can't create. They can't give back.
Right. So the next one is basic income is affordable, because again, people think, oh, we can't afford that. It's the very first thing that many people think of. Oh, that sounds great, but that's way too expensive. No, basic income is affordable. It can be funded, and this mentions it can be funded in a cost neutral way uh, through strategic tax reforms, such as adjusting income tax rates or reducing personal tax allowances. So, like, it is possible to do a small UBI, and let in the U.S. all we would do is replace the standard deduction. Like, we
Right.
can do that. It's very affordable. It's just a flip from the deduction to a refundable credit, and
Yeah.
zero new taxes. We could just do that.
It's also the other, maybe they're going to get to this too as like a more nuanced version, but saying it's affordable, like, I can still see people saying, well, negative income tax is more affordable. And that's missing the fact that basic income and negative income tax can be exactly the same in terms of like the net money flows, like based on design, except basic income is actually more affordable because it doesn't have the same levels of waste that come from the targeting and the bureaucracy. So it's not only
Yeah.
is it affordable, it's like the most affordable dollar for dollar for the impact you're getting of any of the programs.
Yeah. I mean, if you're doing a negative income tax and it's got like a 50% phase out rate, then you are applying a tax to those in the phase out range. And then so, yeah, universal basic income just says, all right, well, let's just apply the tax to like everybody instead of only those in the phase out range. And that's actually cheaper to do that because you're looking at lower marginal tax rates. Does this get into all that? No, because this is just getting into just your key merit narratives and simplifying this down, just to like help people have these like key points that they can talk about basic income in a way that works. Yeah. So I think this also covers, look, we can do progressive taxation, wealth taxes, we can reform capital gains, we can do these things. And even small basic incomes, reduce poverty and inequality, that actually is affordable. We spend
Right.
so much on poverty and inequality. So yeah.
And then on the flip
It's a good
side,
deal.
this was my very first question when I came to UBI was like, can we afford it? And my conclusion was yes, we could afford it several times over, even before considering potential windfalls. Like, if poverty and crime and medical emergencies and incarceration drop dramatically, then we actually are not spending those dollars either anymore. So it becomes not
Yeah.
just something we can manage to pay for, it becomes something that is a good investment with returns from different sectors.
Yeah, I would say not having a basic income is unaffordable. It's people do not think about how expensive it is to not do UBI. They just assume that it's free not doing this. Like, oh, we're not spending any money on basic income. Look how much money we're saving.
Right.
Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way.
That's a good example of like kind of a double negative that's more illustrative than the original statement. Not having a basic income is unaffordable. It actually says a lot.
Yeah.
It's useful.
Because it does sort of force you to look around and be like, are we affording this right now? Are we affording our lives? Because most people would answer no. I mean, especially now. So I think maybe that's a good thing to add to this is like, really are running out of options here.
Look how cheap climate change and fascism is. Like, wow, what a great deal that we're getting not having basic income. Yeah. Okay, so the next one is people need cash as well as better public services. So this is just getting right out there because so many responses say, oh, well, we shouldn't do basic income. We should do universal services. We should, if it's one or the other, we should do services. So no, people need cash as well as better public services. While public services like healthcare and education are essential, cash transfers provide immediate support for individuals to address day-to-day needs such as food, housing, and childcare. I like to say, look, like I fully support universal healthcare and universal education, pre-K through college. We need these services, but you can't eat healthcare. You can't eat school. Like when it comes to basic daily needs, cash meets that and secures that very well. And these other things, don't. They're for different things. We need them too, but they're for different things.
I just want to put that out in your quote book. You can't eat school, Scott Santens.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So another part of it is basic income reduces the strain on public services, particularly the NHS in the UK, by tackling the root causes of health issues such as poverty and financial stress. So again, this is related to the previous thing. If you want to save money, then make sure that people are healthier. You'll spend less money on treating that. And so therefore, if you have a universal healthcare system, you'll most likely spend less on that healthcare system by having a basic income to make people healthier. That also feeds into making it more affordable. And then unlike targeted welfare programs, basic income offers flexibility and empowers individuals to make choices that best suit their unique circumstance, enhancing personal freedom and financial stability.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's two sides to, I think, where this arises from. One is the realistic part of like what UBI is better at and what it isn't. So anytime, like basically I boil it down to anytime we have a competitive functioning marketplace for the good or service, then cash is often better because then people will compete for those dollars and come down to the lowest cost that they can while still having a profit margin. Whereas things like healthcare is an inelastic good and you can be extorted for it because they just know you'll pay whatever the hell you have to pay, right? So healthcare should be done as a service. And then so there's that real side of like, okay, what should UBI be used for? And then like everything else that it can't be used for, you need to do as a service. But then on the other side, the reason to use UBI whenever you can is because it's so much more efficient. And the reason people like say, no, universal basic services in general is what we need, I think comes from a fear of money being wasted. Like that old fear, like if you give people money to like hoping they'll pay for food, they might also pay for drugs or something like that. And it's like, so some of this money is going to get wasted on things we don't like. And it's ignoring the fact that government programs that are providing services are incredibly wasteful. Like a lot of the money doesn't like buy people drugs, but it like goes towards things people don't need or doesn't reach people or pays a lot of extra salaries trying to get it to people, misses a lot of people. So like, when you're balancing the two is the prevalence of waste of cash in the hands of people versus the waste in the hands of that same cash being spent by universal services programs. All of the data shows that people are much more effective with that money and getting what they need. And so that's why you use it UBI for whatever you can. And then service is where UBI falls short.
Yeah, there's all sorts of ways that a service can fall short too. Like it can fail in dramatic ways. Like what I'm reminded of is a really sad story from the book Tyranny of Kindness, which was there was a mother with 3 kids that she was in free housing. So that was a service. She was in free housing. A lot of people would say, no, we don't need basic income. We need free housing. And, food wasn't the issue here either, so they'd say, oh, we should free food, not basic income. And the problem with the unit was there was like a slumlord involved, it was like bad. It was free housing, but it was like substandard housing. And the electricity had gone out. And this was like winter. So what she really needed at that moment in time, that evening, was cash to be able to go out and like buy some blankets or something. And she didn't have that. So she went to sleep with her kids and she woke up and one of her kids was dead, just frozen to death during the night. And it's like what would have solved that was just the ability to actually go out and just buy something as simple as a blanket. And that would have saved the baby's life.
Right.
And so when people say, oh, well, we can't trust them with cash, that's the thing that they're stopping too, is that when these things fail, sometimes you just need cash to be able to fill that gap.
And it's also like cash, you can do a million things with it. Whereas government
Right.
programs, you need like sort of a program or like a line item in a program for every single thing. So that is a very poignant example of something that was missed that should have been obvious but already was missed, right? Like, how do
Right.
we get blankets to these people really quickly? Can't make them stand in line, can't make them whatever, can't have to have the funding set aside, it has to be approved. All of that stuff stands in the way. And then there's also zillions of little examples of the things people do with the money that you can't imagine any program would ever have in their possible things you can put the money toward.
Yeah.
Someone needs a very specific thing for a very specific reason that no government program's ever going to give, but it's actually the best possible way they could spend money right now. Like, to get help that person needs, you know, you don't want to make yourself have to like establish an entire program to then analyze it and suss it out. If you can save a lot of money by just trusting that person with enough to do like all of those things that only they know they need, and waste their
Yeah.
time with like some sort of bureaucracy, even if there's even anything in place to help.
There's a blog that I love that Give Directly did years ago that was there's no charity for a chainsaw, I think is what the title of it. And so is that they, in their unconditional cash, programs that they do, someone had gone out and used the cash to buy a chainsaw to start their own business. And like you can just imagine if there's like a chainsaw like charity or whatever, like in the US, like a national chainsaw charity or like a national chainsaw government service where you can actually just like, I don't know, check out a chainsaw from the local library or whatever. I guess if you're going to start a business, you can't just rent it though. So you have to actually, you need the government to give you a chainsaw. Like those things aren't going to happen. But if you have cash, then yes, you can turn it into a chainsaw. You can start your business. And
Yeah.
good luck finding a charity to do that.
And there's like, everyone's in their different bubbles of what they need to be able to do. And I remember the switch between renting and the number of things where my recourse was like pester the super and the landlord to fix the damn thing, or fix it myself if I can. Homeowning was like, oh, there's a whole lot more I got to do, and then compliance and all kinds of stuff. My general needs changed a lot just based on the living situation, and having the freedom to like make on the spot decisions about like what's the best way to go about solving this little problem that's cropping up. Like right now, we're finding out there's copper in the water in town, and maybe some in ours. We need to get it tested, right? And we need to do stuff for our dog who now is like developing too much copper in her liver. And it's like, I don't want to have to sit through some sort of government program, because there probably even isn't one. I mean, we can bug the local electeds and stuff, but also I want to get water filters, and I want to like, those are the things that I need so my dog doesn't die and I don't end up like with hospital bills, right? At vet bills. Yeah, there's no program for that. Just cash helps.
Yeah. Cash will get you that like Brita Walter filter or even just getting like the reverse osmosis or whatever. Like you can actually solve that problem with some cash instead of full on infrastructure changes.
And meanwhile, I'm not waiting for like 6 months for a response,
Right.
and she's going into liver failure. I'm like already fixing the problem, right? While I
Right.
pursue the other avenues that need to be pursued to like legislatively.
Yeah. So again, basic income and services, you don't have to oppose those things against each other. Right. So the next thing is basic income can fix the UK's or any really broken welfare system. The UK uses universal credit, and there's all sorts of conditions on that. And it's interesting, like they started universal credit like around the time when I first got into basic income. I think that happened like in 2014 or 2015 or something like that, where they combined like 6 programs, welfare programs, into one. But yeah, there's all sorts of problems with it. There's so many cracks, and there's the stigma associated with welfare, which means people don't apply for it when they need it. There's the testing that means people apply and they don't get it. And there's the marginal tax rate problem, which is that means it can not make sense to raise your income because then you'll lose that benefit and potentially be barely better off or even worse off. Like basic income can fix broken welfare systems.
Right.
Great key message.
And I'm about to go a little in the weeds too, but this is not to say any of these narratives are incorrect. That's what we do on this podcast, is go in the weeds. One of the things I end up finding myself pointing out to people on both sides in different directions is the caveats on how you would use it to fix a broken welfare system. So in a place like the Nordic countries where they put a ton of money to their welfare system, and they do actually already a pretty good job, and they're pretty happy with the tax dollars that are more than we're spending, that are going towards better results, right? Like less people on the street, less whatever. The pitch to them would be like, if you take that same amount of money and do it as a UBI, it would be more efficient and would help more people, and you would have more productivity, better economy, all that stuff. And basically, you could just turn your mechanism into a UBI mechanism and get more bang for your buck. Whereas in the US, the reality is we don't put enough money into our social safety nets. So if you just took those same dollars and turned it into a UBI, all of a sudden the UBI would be so small that the people who are getting TANF, food stamps, whatever, would see a big reduction in their already insignificant level of support. In general, wouldn't be getting enough to do the same thing that switching to a UBI in Finland would do, for example. So like I always caution people, like advocates are like, we could just switch over our basic income or our welfare to a basic income, some advocates anyway, and without acknowledging that we still would need to spend more than we currently do in order to do that and improve the welfare system the way we want.
Sure. But we need to replace some of the welfare system because, again, these various welfare programs, they have all these problems. They miss so many people. They discourage employment. Like there's all sorts of problems with it. And so I think it's absolutely 100% wrong to be in the group of people that says we need a basic income along with everything we currently do. And that's true, I think, in any country. If you want to
Right.
just add basic income in addition to everything you currently do, that's wrong. You need to actually replace some programs. And that's the key, is some. And that's where the debate should be, is which programs do you want to replace and which programs you want to keep as additional. And then that requires thinking, all right, when we're talking about welfare, what do we mean? Like, I don't think welfare should mean healthcare systems. That should be a universal healthcare system. It should be, as a citizenship right. That's not welfare. Welfare should be, a temporary targeted thing. So there are certain things that make a lot of sense to replace, and something like disability supports, that doesn't make sense to replace because that should be purely additional. That is something that, anyone with a disability, it's always going to be harder to earn extra income compared to everybody else. There's always going to be higher costs compared to everybody else. So it makes sense to have something additional for that specific group that requires targeting and testing, and that can be additional to UBI. But when it comes to lots of other things, it depends, and it's open to debate.
That's where the debate about the amount comes back into play, is like,
Right.
if
Yeah.
you I fully agree that we need to replace a lot of these programs, food stamps, TANF, like with a UBI. But if we're talking like an introductory small UBI that's like $100 a month based on, like, I don't know, if it's a carbon tax dividend, and then using that as an excuse to just get rid of everything, then a lot of people are made much worse off.
Yeah.
So you need a minimum viability of a size. Like what I did with the calculator was, I said, if you're going to replace programs in the design of your policy that's getting analyzed, you have to make it so that the people on those programs are no worse off. Like the people who are getting the benefits aren't seeing a big reduction in those benefits that outweighs the size of the
Yeah.
basic income.
Most people in the UBI movement too actually do support a no harm provision. It's not part of the definition, but anyone, let's say most people well over 90%, close to 100% of people in the UBI movement would say, look, as you adopt basic income, you should make sure that no one is worse off. And it's frustrating too. Where like Andrew Yang, he believed that as well, and so his policy was like, okay, if someone is earning more than $1,000 per month through whatever existing policies they have, then they can keep that. So if you've got $1,500 a month, in various welfare programs, then they can stay on that until those programs, disappear. If they get a job and they lose those programs, if they're retested and they lose those programs, like that they would fall to $1,000 instead of zero.
Right.
Like he was really looking at it as no harm. But to this day, people believe that he was one of those people who wanted to replace all of these programs, get rid of them, and have people be worse off with $1,000, and that's just a lie.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Well, there's also there's an issue too. The people that argue in defense of like the fairness of it all, where if you give everyone a basic income and then the people who are on welfare are then losing their welfare, they're not getting as much of an additional benefit as the people who are only seeing extra basic income, right? Like the idea that it's not fair that they're getting a basic income but losing their benefits, so they didn't really change much for them, where other people all of a sudden are getting more in basic income. And what they're missing is how bad welfare is at getting to people. So they're ignoring the fact that there are more than half the people, some cases like more than 90% of the people who are supposed to be getting or are supposed to be eligible for these benefits are getting nothing.
It was 13 million Americans in poverty were getting nothing at all. That was like in 2019.
And that's the unfairness. That's the bigger unfairness we're trying to rectify. So if the people who are lucky enough to be getting welfare benefits get those effectively swapped out for something that no longer puts work disincentives and welfare cliffs in front of them, they're better off and have as much money, even though they're not getting an extra $1,000, and the people that were denied by those welfare programs are getting a full extra $1,000 a month or whatever. It's absolutely fair. And that's how we're treating it with commingle too, is like sort of a mishmash of like Andrew's opt-in, like it's always voluntary. So if your benefits are going to be, if it's not worth it for you, we don't want you to do it until we find a way to make it worth it for you. And secondly, if you are getting benefits of any type, that is absolutely up for grabs in terms of what you're pledging your 7% on, because the people that money would be going to, like if you're getting, a couple $100 a month in some sort of benefit and you're paying 7% of that $14 is going towards people who never got that benefit in the first place, right? So they are more disadvantaged and need the money more. That's the basic premise.
Okay, so the next key point narrative, basic income can address the public health crisis. So we already kind of covered this too with the other ones in regards to like, affordability and stuff. But yeah, financial insecurity is a leading contributor to poor mental and physical health. Basic income directly addresses this, providing a stable financial foundation that reduces stress and anxiety. By preventing stress-related illnesses and promoting healthier lifestyles, basic income leads to substantial savings in healthcare costs and improves overall societal well-being. As a preventative public health measure, basic income tackles the social determinants of health, such as poverty and inequality, reducing the long-term burden on the NHS and social care systems.
Yeah, it's a little bit like to me, like they say, school outcomes are like 30% determined by what goes on inside the walls of the school and 70% determined by what's going on at home.
Right.
And so just blaming the teachers for everything is missing the forest for the trees. One very poignant interview I had early on in Bootstraps was someone from Canada who was talking about, I think an interview they did, but with Canadian doctors, who said they absolutely preferred being able to work in a universal healthcare program or a system, but they still a lot of times wish they could just prescribe cash. Like
Yeah.
cash is the best preventative medicine. Like a lot of the times people don't end up going to the doctor or eating healthy or going to the gym or whatever because they can't afford it. They don't have the time, whatever. We have a much healthier baseline when people have the financial power to make the healthier decisions.
Yeah. And it's not only about poverty either. And it's really inequality, insecurity. These things happen to those above the poverty line. And so all these programs that focus only on poverty don't actually address this. Like the best way to actually improve health is actually by getting at that insecurity and that inequality by reducing both of those. And you can be in the middle class, you can even be considered rich by other people. And if you lack that security because you're always wondering, like, I could lose my job at any point, I've got to get as much money as I can. I've got to, hoard. We talked about that before. Unlike this insecurity can lead to this kind of hoarding behavior and greed of wealth accumulation just because of wondering, worst case scenario, what happens? I don't want my family to live on the streets. So even though I'm earning six figures, I'm really worried that can disappear
Right.
at any moment. And then that actually leads to like heart disease and stuff.
Yeah, that trickles up, not just the cortisol, but the reality. If you live in a world where zero and destitution are possible and actually somewhat prevalent, like you can see the path there, even when you're well off, you're in defense mode, and you're like, which puts you in hoarding mode.
The next one, basic income would not be challenged by increased immigration. This one, I don't think this is really a key narrative. Like, I actually wouldn't have included this one, but this is in the UK, so maybe they feel it's absolutely necessary to put this in. But okay, like it's certainly a concern that people have. It's just I don't hear it as often as you might think, considering how anti-immigrant like the US even
Right.
is. But still, concerns about increased immigration undermining basic income are unfounded. In the first instance, most basic income proposals include residency or citizenship requirements. Payments are not immediately available. So yeah, like you could look at basic income as providing an incentive for legal immigration, so especially if you have no problem with immigration and your claim is that it's only illegal immigration, well then great. Basic income means that there's actually much more of a reason to go the legal route because now you can actually hopefully qualify for basic income after say
Right.
5 years or 7 years or whatever, going like the legal route.
Right. And I think there's like two types of people in general, or two reasons where people might say, I'm okay with legal or with immigration. It just needs to be done the right way. There's the ones that it's a sort of a dodge to say, I actually don't like, people that are a different color or whatever being in my area. And there's other people who like really mean it. Like, I want you to go the route, make sure you're paying taxes and everything. That what could be a better incentive for people to do it the right way? That's like when you plug into the system and you put your name down on the paper and go the right way, you start having eligibility for this basic income. Like, it's a way to get people
Yeah.
to like pay their taxes, fill out censuses, like have a better functioning government, because now you want to plug into a government that's not focused on punishing you. It's focused on like supporting you in doing things the right way.
Yeah. I really think of these things together with voting, basic income and voting. Not so much that, I'm not saying that you should that voting should be a requirement, even though when it comes to requirements, I think it's probably among the better ones to require. What I'm saying is that like, if you're an immigrant, you can't immediately cross the border and vote, especially if you're a legal immigrant, you'll never be able to vote. But if you're a legal immigrant, you can eventually vote after a process, and that can take a while. Like it can take 7 years, 8 years, 10 years. Like it's a process, and even expensive process to actually finally become a citizen and being
Right.
able to vote. So yeah, it's the same thing. If you immigrate, you should be able to eventually get a basic income when you can vote, I think.
Yeah, it's one of the two things that come up a lot of like this demographic. Do you have an answer for that? And it's immigrants and convicts, essentially, people who are
Yeah.
incarcerated. And the answer is like, uh, people are like, well, what would you do with that in a very know-it-all way? And the answer is like, well, there's a lot of things we could do. And it's, like, one is like, maybe if you're incarcerated, you're not getting a basic income while you're incarcerated, and it goes towards funding your stay or something like that. And it takes, but, or maybe not. Like, there's a lot of different arguments either way. These are still sort of more edge cases than the main policy. And there are things we could make policy choices about. Like I could see immigration, instead of it being like you start getting a basic income when you get your citizenship, maybe there is like a partial basic income when you're going through the process. Or we just decide what we do with that, and it's not
I
that
actually have
hard.
a video for us to watch actually just about that, but that'll have to be later. There's one more thing here, and I can actually go to that next. But yeah, basic income would strengthen democracy. Another key message to get across. I think that's a potentially the strongest one right now, considering just how democracy is eroding all around the world. Basic income enhances civic participation by reducing economic barriers that prevent people from engaging in political activities such as voting or community organizing. Like we see the realities of this with every senior pension program around the world. We see this with Social Security. People actually start getting Social Security and they become much more involved in civics. Like it would really strengthen democracy. And not only that, like it enables you to donate to grassroots politicians. It enables you to donate to like signature initiatives. It enables you to donate your besides time, money. Um, like it's besides that stuff too. It's something that I think makes us feel more. It's something. If it's a universal program, I think actually strengthens democracy by being universal. It's no longer us versus them. It's like we're all in this together. We're all treating each other the same way, and I think that helps democracy as well.
Yeah, it goes back to the idea of what is a nation. Like if it's a agreed upon story, and if part of that story is like we are a group of people, we are a nation that provides for everyone. Like we are investing in each and every one of you, and you essentially matter. I mean that is at the heart of the idea of democracy. Is like everyone's voice matters, everyone's life matters. So how could it not? Like polarization and just dysfunction in government and everything. I think that's all coming largely to this breakdown in trust and feeling of interconnectedness and support of each other. Like now we're in this sort of fighting each other for power and resources mode where I would hope we can imagine a version where we're working together, like we're on the same team, because our nation, our shared story is not that we're two teams fighting within the nation, but or four teams or whatever. We're essentially one team. How do we build that?
Yeah, and I like how this mentions too that we have seen the data. We've covered this before. That when a government does a basic income pilot of some kind or some kind of basic income program, it increases voter turnout and increases trust. Both those things are also key to democracy. So yeah, those are the 7 key narratives that this report put out. Good narratives. I think you did a good job. The next thing I wanted to cover, so you had just mentioned this, and this was actually brand new to me. I'd heard about it happening, but I hadn't heard actually any stories from it. So this is the first story that I heard of the stimulus checks in prison. It was really interesting.
I was still in prison when they started giving out stimulus checks during the pandemic. And at first, guys were applying thinking, man, I got a 30-year sentence. I'll just deal with the consequences later. And then somebody in the law library looked it up and realized there was nothing in the bill excluding incarcerated people from being eligible. But a lot of DOCs and a lot of politicians didn't like this. So in some states, when the checks were arriving at the prison, they were refusing to give it to the people or refusing to put it on their books. So people in, I think, Texas sued, and the federal court said, no, there's nothing in this bill excluding them. You have to give them money. So all of a sudden, all of this started applying, and all this money started pouring in. I still remember the first day I opened my statement sheet, and I saw that check, and I was like, oh, that is more money than I've ever had in my life. And my biggest fear at first was that all that money was going to cause problems, that people would be fighting and stealing and robbing, but the exact opposite happened. Because when everybody had enough, when everybody had their basic needs met, there was no need to steal. Because so often the guys who were stealing or robbing, they didn't have the things they needed, so they were taking from someone who did. And even relations that had nothing to do with money got better. In a position where if somebody had stepped on somebody's toe or hadn't said excuse me or one of those ego things, guys were like, hey man, don't worry about it. I was still in prison.
So like it helped society within prison.
Within prison.
That's awesome. Yeah, and there's just such, I mean, we've been working with someone who was incarcerated for a while, and like there's just what they put you through there in terms of basically the slave labor side of things, where it's like you work for $1 a day or whatever the hell it is, and try to bank up enough money to get some Doritos after the week, and then you got to have your family send you money, and they got to pay money to set up phone calls. It's like this weird extortionary thing where to me, there's so many things about incarceration where it's like a healthier attitude about what it should be, like beyond the rehabilitative side, which we don't do, is the punishment is about lack of freedom to pursue your life, right? You can't go out and like find out what you're doing on this earth. You can't connect with people. You're stuck in a place. That already to me is the big punishment. We don't need to heap on all these other punishments like disenfranchisement and beatings and like all the kinds of crap that we do. It sort of muddies the idea of what prison is supposed to be for, which is making society safer, rehabilitating people, and again, to make society safer. If we're doing it out of just a seeking of punishment, there is no end outcome. And that's why we end up seeing these like forever punishment sort of mentalities where you should never get a job. You should have thought of that before you did the crime. There's like a no do the crime, do the time sort of mentality. It's like if you ever did the crime, even if you've done the time, we're going to treat you like a criminal for the rest of your life. We're going to not treat you like you ever have a chance to like make something of yourself while you're in prison. We're not going to give you support and programs to like sort of better yourself. There's so much of that punitive mindset that sort of makes it obvious that it's not whatever they talk about with rehabilitation isn't really backed up by actions.
Yeah, but what I really liked about that story was it just, you don't really think about how the ecosystem of prison and like crime within prison. And so like you think like a lot of people I think would agree to the claim that basic income would reduce crime and therefore reduce the number of people going into prison. Like I think most people would agree that that's the case, and we see evidence for that, like that's backed up by evidence. But what's so interesting that I haven't really thought of before myself is the crime that goes on in prison. And if there's a basic income within prison, would that reduce the crime going on in prison? Like, would you be less likely to steal from someone in prison if you had a basic income within prison? And apparently the answer is yes. It's like that is a problem in prison, is people not having any access to that, and then they have to steal within those walls. Just fascinating to me to think about that.
You end up with currencies like all the stuff we've seen on I don't know how much true it is or whatever, but like the cigarette trade or whatever goes on in there, you have economies spring up in both currency based and relationship based economies. And if you take scarcity off of people's backs, then those economies can function better and those societies can function better.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting to think about if we're talking about like how do you define a nation? Like it's really just like what are the borders drawn around? What group of people are these borders drawn around? And so really like you could think of the prison as a nation. It has literal walls around it. It has it's a select group of people, and if it's actually a pretty good place to do a study, right? and you don't want to we're studying our human subject, but if the study is to give people money and see what happens, so and you're like, it's a very good place to prove
it's
the
also
worth of basic income.
Yeah,
right?
it's a micro country with universal housing and universal food.
Right.
So like
And
it has those
healthcare, maybe?
services.
Yeah, sort of.
And healthcare. So that everyone there, they don't have to worry necessarily about those things, but you still need cash. And like so these economies still spring up, and then, there's people use their cash for other things, like even, calling up their families or, buying stuff in the commissary, whatever. There's still a need for that basic income. So again, that goes back to like the key narrative of saying that you need both cash and services. So like here in this country, this little micronation of prison where you've got housing and food and healthcare, you still need currency.
And I could see an argument for not getting a basic income while you're in prison, but then you have to change the paradigm where you need cash in prison. Like the fact that they've made that the case where it's like, you need cash to call your mom. You need cash to like do all these different things. It's like, why would you force someone to need cash when they have no recourse to make it, right? You're forcing people to do things to get cash and not giving them a way to do it. That can't have a good outcome.
Right. Needing their families have to help provide that income too. So you've got like people working on the outside to like help people on the inside. Yeah. Okay, so this is I think you'll really enjoy this one, Conrad. Was right up your alley. This is a new study, societal inequality linked to structural brain changes in children. So lo and
Boy.
behold, it turns out from this study that it's not poverty itself that causes these brain changes. It's inequality. So they looked at this because they found like the same stuff in both rich and poor, but like, depending on like where they were living. So let's see.
I mean, immediately it makes a certain amount of intuitive sense that it's like you're growing up as a kid and you're trying to make sense of the world around you. And if everyone's in the same position, it's easier to make sense of it. Whereas if like the kids over there have a totally different experience than you, it's harder.
Yeah. So here's a quote. This isn't just about individual family income. It is about how income is distributed in society. Both children from wealthy and lower income families showed altered neurodevelopment, and we established that this has a lasting impact on well-being. The team used data from over 10,000 children aged 9 to 10 across the United States. This was gathered from the Adolescent Brain Cognitive Development Study, a large-scale developmental neuroimaging resource. They measured inequality by scoring how evenly income is measured in society. This is the GINI coefficient for 0, perfect equality, and where everyone has the same income, and 1 is perfect inequality, where one person has all the income. MRI scans were analyzed to study the surface area and thickness of regions in the cortex, including those involved in higher cognitive functions. Again, this is the stuff that was looked at in the baby's first years study. And the scan showed children living in areas of higher levels of societal inequality associated with reduced surface area of the cortex and altered connections between multiple brain regions. These findings provide evidence of impacted neurodevelopment, which might relate to future mental health and cognitive function. Yeah, so these kids, rich or poor, it depends on where you're living and how unequal that is. If you are, if your family is like $200,000 income or whatever, but you're surrounded by billionaires, you're going to have these same kind of impacts than if you're like in poverty and surrounded by, like middle class or something. Like what matters is the distribution within society, not
Right.
so much the lack thereof.
I think that's why bootstraps and American dream and meritocracy arguments and narratives are so impactful, is that I guess a deep part of the human psyche is this very strong desire for fairness. It's like this all people are created equal sort of thing kind of lives within our intuition, like within our DNA. And if you see something opposing that, it's sort of deleterious to your psyche. It's like, I need to understand, well, what makes that person better than me? So if everyone is dealing with the same situation, it's like you can wrap your head around it. And it's like, oh, the situation is tough. Not, yeah. And then the amount of resources is like not enough or whatever. But yeah, if it's an unfairness thing, that's something that the human conscience can't tolerate.
I'm just wondering where they found the places with the low inequality to be the control group. Like, how are they able to compare places? Like, they must have found like some group of people with some sort of
like Amish
something
communities.
Resembling. Who are they studying there? Like, I don't know if anyone
Yeah.
that's not living in a place of immense
I mean, maybe
inequality.
it's just maybe they're just tying it to the level of inequality. Like if you measure
Like your
one place as
neighborhood, I
like
guess,
0.7
like
and another
your
place is
school.
0.3, or if you broaden it,
Yeah.
if you broaden it to have two different, like,
But
it's
again,
like
it's
my
like, where are you
neighborhood is a
drawing the
different
line?
level of
Like we have
income than the
we
next
have
neighborhood.
we have sort of a conception of, like, you're sort of drawing this conceptual line of like, who are the group of people in my world, right? And if you look at the entire world, like, and you're looking at it with any kind of like open eyes, you're seeing that there is massive inequality, right? But even so, you have to like somehow say that the group that you're asking to look at is somehow has the mental conception of a smaller area, right? Like, you have to
I think they're just
define it
using the Gini
geographically or
coefficient.
something. Yeah, I know, but like, where is that even coming from? Like, they're having to measure it within like a geographic area.
Sure. So I think like a city, and again, I have to like look at the actual study, but
Yeah.
like I don't think they're necessarily looking at a neighborhood. Maybe they're looking at like a city or a town or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I don't know how granular Gini coefficient data is.
Yeah, but I think when you talk about like kids being stressed out by the world around them, I think they do have a conception of how the rest of the world outside of their neighborhood. Like even if you do live in like a very wealthy neighborhood, like those people do have an understanding that there's poverty around them, even if they're not like looking straight at it. Like, sort of makes you
Yeah.
wonder like what are the factors that contribute to your like understanding of inequality?
I wonder, like, what the mechanism of that sort of reality reaching the kids, so to the extent that it impacts their brain development, is like, is it that the parents are reacting to the inequality and passing that on? Is it that they're noticing a difference between their
Sure.
parents and other parents? Is it they're noticing the difference between themselves and other
Lots of
kids?
things. Yeah.
Like, what are the big, like, if I'm in an area where, my kid has a lot less we have a lot less money than other kids, how can I best at least protect them from feeling the brunt of that, you know? Like, do I just work on my own behavior? Do I, like, have more communication with the kid about the world? Like,
Even in like even in some like rich communities or poor communities, like there is a strata of like there's a class system that just exists naturally. Like there is the person that you know is the rich person. There's a person that you know is on the other side of the tracks or whatever. And so it's gonna that stratification will happen given any amount of like inequality, right? There's even the
Yeah,
tiniest.
but you can reduce it. So I'm sure
Yes.
like the
So is
study
it?
looked at, kids, the Gini coefficient, in the environment was zero point 0.4 versus another one that was zero point 0.4 or whatever.
Mhm.
And then, you correlate with the various EEG scans or whatever, then you can see that there's some connection there between the Gini coefficient and that. So it's not like, yeah, we are never going to get the Gini coefficient down to zero. And I would argue that we don't want to. Like, some amount of inequality is actually good and positive for society. But what you don't want is one, you don't want zero point 0.5. Like that's all
Mhm.
pretty bad. Like the Nordic states are around 0.25, like to zero point 0.3, I think. Like that can generally be considered good. But like getting the US down to that, you would see better outcomes in these regards. And so when it comes to like this EEG stuff, and how we looked at like the baby's first years and stuff, like they're exploring the causative mechanism of a correlation that we know exists. And this is just more data showing that, look, part of the reason why that baby's first years hasn't found anything is because it's not looking at inequality. It's just looking at getting people more money instead of actually changing their communities.
yeah, I'd be curious to, like, learn more about what they come up with in terms of causation they can defend statistically. But I'm I'm also curious to see when
Yeah,
someone comes
but
out
I
with,
mean, the
like, a
baby's
reverse.
first years one is like, I mean, I'm getting into like the weird science part of it, but like it is like actually like say it is reducing inequality because the people at this lowest end of this group are they now have more money and are supposedly closer to the the group that has the higher income, right? Like so there was a spread
Sure, to a very
of
small
income.
degree, is
Yeah,
decreasing inequality. Very
right.
small degree.
Yeah. Well, I mean, depending on like who was in the original study group and do they know each other, right? Can they have some perception of who those other people are? Like there's a lot that goes into like, how your brain is producing cortisol and like to find it. I think is like probably the most important thing we can be studying right now, but like how do you actually do that? I think I want to look more at like how they actually did this study because I'm curious.
I'm just waiting for some asshole to come along and blame the babies and say, "It is correlated and the causation's in the other direction. It's these babies with their bad brains that are forcing their families to have less income."
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
just
there's something that goes on. There's like there's if you have like two kids, I got two kids, they have this constant perception of who has more and who has less, right? Like when they were little, like the argument was always he got that and I didn't, right? Like it is
I just want to
very,
yeah,
very
this is
basic.
I just want to make sure that people have seen this video because this is obviously just exactly what you're talking about. But
Getting grape and
this
you
is the grape like
So she
experiment.
gives a rock to us, that's the task. And we give her a piece of cucumber and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us. And that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber.
Get a grape. Give me my grape. Grape.
She tests the rock now against the wall. She needs to give it to us.
Like, is this the right thing? This is the
And
rock,
she
right?
gets cute.
God damn it. Give me the grape.
Yeah.
Like, that's human society right there. You know, like we're still monkeys. We have our monkey brains, and that's just so true.
It's
all about inequality.
relative sense of fairness. It's really important to us. Like if I'm going to suffer, as long as everyone else is suffering, I can like accept that. But if I'm just suffering just seemingly for no reason when other people aren't, then that's pretty hard to stomach.
Yeah, now we're getting to this point where trillionaires, like the first trillionaire is going to happen, then we're going to have trillionaires. And meanwhile, I mean, the middle class will be even more eroded than it is. Like, we're already seeing the results of increasing inequality. It's not pretty.
Well, this is what gets really insidious too, is because we need things to be fair. People will tell themselves stories about, like, this is why I'm bad, in order to justify why they're doing worse than others. They're having less success. It's like, well, I'm going to buy all these self-help books about how I can be a better me, because obviously it's my fault. Where the darker truth is that society is just fucking you over. And that's a much harder thing to accept than I'm bad and broken, but I can maybe hopefully fix myself, as opposed to the world is bad and broken and it's just never going to be fair for me.
So here's another thing along these lines too, that this is new to me. This is fascinating and brand new to me. I knew nothing about this. This was a thread that someone did recently in response to a new study that just came out that actually looked into this. So I just wanted to read through this thread, this little bit of history that I think everyone will find pretty fascinating too. Progressive era America had a solution to child poverty. Put poor kids on trains, send them west, new town, new destiny. They did this for 75 years with 200,000 children. Economists finally ran the numbers. Every assumption was back to front. Between 1854 and 1929, America ran one of the biggest social experiments in history. Thousands of orphans were loaded onto trains in New York City and shipped west to new families, new towns, new lives. The theory? Geography is destiny. Change the place, transform the child. Picture this. You're 11 years old in 1880s Manhattan. Your father's dead. Your mother drinks. You're sleeping in alleyways, stealing food to survive. Then one day you're told, you're going west to land of opportunity, to farms, fresh air, and a better life. You have no choice. The railroad stops at Doijiak, Michigan. You're taken to the local saloon with 44 other children. Townspeople walk around you, inspecting, asking questions, checking your teeth. Within hours, you're assigned to a farmer you've never met. This was the Orphan Train program. Charles Loring Brace, founder of the Children's Aid Society, believed the solution was simple. The poisonous influences of the city were corrupting children. Put them in rural America, and they'd flourish. Progressive era America loved it. It was romantic. It was optimistic. It was also completely testable. Enter two economists in 2025. What if we track down these kids in the census records, match them across decades, see how their lives actually turned out? After digitizing ledgers and running probabilistic matching algorithms across 80 years of census data, they found 6,540 orphan train riders and followed them from childhood into adulthood. The researchers discovered that which town you were sent to was essentially random. No correlation between a kid's characteristics and the destination county. Smart kids did not all end up in Smartville. But whether you were sent west at all, that was highly non-random. Kids selected for the trains were older, more literate, less likely to be troublemakers, more likely to have dead alcoholic parents. Classic selection bias problem. But here's the trick. The rate of sending varied wildly by year, from under 5% in 1903 to over 25% in 1880, based on random bureaucratic factors. Did the New York Juvenile Asylum move into a smaller building? Suddenly you're shipping kids west. This creates an instrumental variable, a way to isolate the causal effect of going west. Going west, it turns out, did nothing. Zero effect on adult income, occupational status, marriage rates, number of children. The entire premise that moving from city to country would transform lives was bogus. But wait, you say, maybe some places out west were better than others. Great question. They tested that too. They looked at urbanization, manufacturing, schools, income, colleges, even the number of patents. Nothing. County characteristics didn't matter either. Sent to a booming industrial town versus a remote farming village, no difference in adult outcomes. The land of opportunity narrative, also false. Place effects were essentially zero. But here's where it gets interesting. One thing did predict how kids turned out: the income of the foster father you got randomly matched with at that bar. So you're 11 years old in 1880. You spend maybe 7 years with a random foster family. They probably see you as free farm labor. No genetic connection, no choice in the matter. But your foster dad's income predicts your adult earnings half as strongly as if he'd been your actual biological father. Family beats geography, and it isn't even close. It wasn't the fresh country air. It wasn't the moral rural environment. It wasn't educational opportunities. It wasn't local economic dynamism. It was whether you got randomly assigned to a farmer earning $800 versus $400 a year. This turns the progressive era philosophy upside down. Remove children from correcting cities? No. Place them with economically stable families. The frontier builds character? No. Household resources build opportunity. Geography is destiny? No. Family is destiny. Some nice details from the paper. Kids could game the system. One bit a potential foster's hand to avoid placement. Others would run away after a few hours and reboard the train. The matching process was literally stand in a tavern, get picked, leave with a stranger within hours. Modern implications: this challenges contemporary place effect studies that show neighborhoods matter. This shows it might matter much less than we think, at least when you control for family level factors. Foster care placement should prioritize family quality over geographic factors. Housing mobility programs should focus on who you're surrounded by, not where you are. Just move somewhere better is too simplistic. The orphan trains were designed to test progressive era beliefs about environment and opportunity. They just had to wait 100 years for economists to actually run the numbers. Yeah, the paper is Writing to Opportunity, Geographic and Household Effects from the Orphan Trains, and it was just published.
That's
That's a
fascinating.
good one.
Like it immediately made me think of the veil of ignorance. That's what it is. So yeah, behind the veil of ignorance, it would only make sense to design a society where, regardless of where you're randomly born, that each person should have like some minimum. You don't want to like set things up so that you have the potential of being born into the situation that you can't ever escape. You're screwed, whatever. So there's like an inherent fairness to designing a society with like basic income so that actually matches the veil of ignorance. So here, it's fascinating to me that just is like clear evidence that really so much matters just who you're born to. Like, what is the income of your family that you're born to? And that just controls so much of your destiny.
Yeah, and there's, I mean, I can see a debate going back and forth with this. I mean, it's super compelling to me. I can see people saying, well, someone's income is an outcome of like what quality of person they are, right? And so how do you extricate like how much is your income a result of like how good of a person you are versus how good of a person you are, a loving parent, is a result from the bandwidth freed up by your income. Yeah, and I think there's probably a little bit of both, but I think in general, what we see with all these pilots is the more income comes in, you see, how households function better in general. Like the income all by itself, when introduced, creates better functioning households, better functioning people. So I whatever the messiness of it is, I believe that's a big factor, is that the money itself is making a big positive difference.
Yeah, there's something kind of similar happening like in a lot of places, but in Santa Monica, there was a big article in the New York Times a couple weeks ago about how there's basically a program where people could like get shipped off somewhere else. Like, and there was just one guy who was like sick of seeing all the homeless people around and was willing to like, fund a trip to go stay with a family member or anywhere besides in front of his business. Right. And you got tons of people, like huge lines of people saying, yes, do this for me. And they were, so it kind of, the article covered some particular people and what that was like for them. But they were seeking, like, they had zero, right? The people that are in the streets now, and they are being like shipped off somewhere else. And it does make you wonder, like, is that a better place, just the act of like getting out of where you are? So like, it makes me wonder about the original experiment, or not experiment, program, but that probably the reason that people were wanting to get these poor kids into the country was to get them out of sight, right? So that they're not like cluttering up the streets, right? And so, but
yeah, everyone holding out their bowls saying, "Can I have some
yeah,
more, please?"
right.
Like, no, get out of here.
Like,
Go
yeah,
work
it
on a
makes your
farm.
city look bad. Yeah, you need to go out and work. But yeah, so I wonder, kind of, it just makes me think, because it's so reminiscent of like that article, that like, is the idea that you're going off to stay with this family member really saying you're going someplace where you have just some income helping you, right? That's all you're really looking for, is just some additional money, and some other place where, like, the person going back to a rich family is going to do better than the person going back to their poor family. It's kind of obvious in that way.
I mean, I got to imagine, yeah, there's some element of place-based, but it's very secondary to like the opportunity of your family that you're in, your
Right. But like, so much of the
income
place
status.
is about like that relative, the Gini coefficient of that area that you're going to, like, what is like the economy like there? What are the incomes there? So yeah, place matters, but then the details of the place matter, especially economically speaking.
And like where in the hierarchy of that place you land. Like if you come in and you're
Right.
like at the bottom of the inequality chain, versus if you come in and you're like in the middle, like the whole different set of opportunities open up to you. If your dad can connect you with a job when you're 18 versus can't, or your mom or whatever.
I think we're talking about the plot of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, maybe, or Different Strokes.
I mean, that's what I was directly thinking of this entire
That was
time.
just a reboot
like
of the Orphan trains.
That I don't know how to do the dance.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, so I wanted to cover, there's a new pilot that's happening I know people want to know about. So this is the first like real crypto pilot.
I have not seen this one. Just the headline cracks me up.
So this is Coinbase has teamed up with GiveDirectly. And what they're doing is providing $12,000 in USDC to a group of people. It's 160 low-income New Yorkers. And they're doing a little bit different too. They think GiveDirectly is really leaning towards lump sums. Like, they really think that lump sum is better than monthly. So in this program, they're doing, what is it? An initial payment
I'm not
of
actually
$8,000.
Pretty sure I believe that they're that in the bag for lump sums. I bet you there's an element of politics going on.
They published recently that they were
like.
Oh, you mean like
where
do
they
you
can
feel,
get their money from?
right,
Might
some of the
want them
reasons
to believe that.
Yeah,
but maybe not. I mean, I'm not against lump sums.
So it's people will get $8,000 front, and then they get 5 months of $800 a month. And so then over the course of the year, that's $12,000. And yeah, what's different about this is USDC. So there's like, clearly, if you were anti-crypto, you're like, screw this program, it's not cash or whatever. But you're getting USDC, and we've talked about this. Like, even like the last episode, we were asked about crypto and UBI. Coinbase has these debit cards, and then so if you get $12,000 in USDC, then you can use that debit card anywhere, just like you could use your own debit card or credit card. Like, you can just use that anywhere at all. And then also, if you want to take out cash, you can stick that into an ATM machine, take out cash. Like, it really is essentially cash. This is not like, they're not giving Bitcoin, and it's not like you have to, use an app for this or whatever. This is basically cash. So it's interesting to see Coinbase get on this too. Like, if this works well, like, I'm sure Coinbase is hoping that some of these people are actually going to maybe buy Bitcoin or Ethereum or something else with their USDC. Maybe they'll put like 10% into Bitcoin. And then like next year when they measure they'll find that these people actually built up their savings more than other pilots because Bitcoin kept on rising through that. And then so, not only did it help with their basic needs, but then some people actually ended up with more savings in the form of Bitcoin or something by the end of it. Like, you can see the story that Coinbase is going for, but from the other side of this, like, I disagree with people who have the takes that this is somehow like an evil thing, or it's not basic income because it's not actually cash. Like, it really is practically cash.
I mean, it's sort of Give Directly's MO in Africa, where they don't have the ability to like do an easy cash thing because they don't have a
phone,
banking
like phone
system.
points, really.
So they're doing USDC, which is the fact that it's pegged to the dollar makes it a lot more like doing a cash program.
Right.
And if they have it as
Makes
like
it
a
identical. Like there's
Right.
really nothing different at all.
if it's just a debit card too, and you can go to the ATM, then it might as well be. Like, that was my main response to most people that say you got to do this in crypto, is like, well, when I ran a program, my concern was, can all the people in our program like use it to go buy a sandwich? Can they do their laundry, or do they have to like have a friggin' wallet or something online and remember the passcode and find a way to convert it? And that's the main thing, is like, can you use it as cash? And if you can, then that, it might as well be cash to me. Like, if crypto can stand in for cash like this, then I'm much more open to it. And I would also say, yeah, and especially if it's not speculative, like if it will be exchanged dollar for dollar. I'll also
Right.
say I like, if even though it's like favoring lump sum, I think for something that is a lump sum, it's got a good blended design, like that 8,000 upfront plus 5 months of 800. I can see actually going a long way in like big initial expenses, still like frequent stability for a while to like get over some extra surprises, or to like, you know, take a few swings at things and still have more coming in. That's not a bad design for a pilot. I actually think
Like,
it's pretty
I
good.
wish it was more months, like I wish it was a full year of monthly payments instead
Right.
of just,
Yeah.
5 months of monthly payments. But, and so, I would make the lump sum smaller and spread it out more. But sure, it's just they're experimenting with this. They want to demonstrate something. They want
Yeah.
to see some kind of
Well, I would
potentially better outcome.
want the basic income part of it, the frequent monthly part of it, to be sort of its own, like sort of be justifiable in and of itself, and then the lump sum being additional. Like, instead of it all being like, this is for your basic needs, the lump sum is like, here's for like an investment you want to make. So here's like $3,000 at the beginning of the year. Also, you get $1,000 a month for the year. So that ends up being like 15 grand or whatever, where it's like, all right, you can make some moves, but also every single month through the year, you'll have something to fall back on if things don't go your way,
Yeah, just Give Directly is, for whatever reason, like, it just seemed, they really seem to be saying, look, we're seeing that we can actually really trust people, and that they're to the point where they just make better use out of a lump sum. They start up more businesses, and then they create this like long lasting incomes. When it comes to, like, we're talking about basic income, and we know that monthly works better. But if you're like a charity and you're looking for maximum impact, that can potentially mean raising someone's income permanently because they start up their own business or whatever, then I can see how lump sums could be something that we're leaning into, because maybe that does mean more of those businesses versus just using on the basic needs, and the program ends.
Right.
And
Yeah,
that's
you're
it.
talking about distributing it a finite amount. If you have
Right.
a unending policy, then you
Right.
can't give it all at once because you don't know how long the person's going to be alive.
I mean,
And also, if you have a permanent policy, it's permanent. So, it's $1,000 a month. Great.
Mhm.
Like, that's, but if you only have $12,000, the question is, what is the best possible way of getting $12,000 to someone?
Yeah.
I mean, if you really, you could just say, like, if when you're born, you turned 18, you get $1,000 back pay for those 18 years per month, right? Like,
Yeah, like a
like
baby
maybe a
bond.
lump sum actually is a great idea.
Well, I
Like,
think
when you turn 18, you suddenly have this pile of money.
Yeah.
to
I mean,
play with.
Thomas Paine wanted a lump sum at 21. Like, that was
Yeah.
his idea.
I think it's
Okay.
to me, it's like a distraction to like put these against each other. I think they serve different purposes. For
Yeah,
me,
they're not. But
Sure.
for me, basic income is about ongoing stability and security, and baby bond lump sum stuff is about investments. And if you're saying which one or the other, you're sort of missing the point that they serve different purposes. They are meant for one is for safety and security more, and the other is for mobility and like investability, you know?
But it's
And
more of
I
like a
think
fun thing to talk about. Like, if you win the lottery, do you want it all at once or do you want it spread out over, annually?
Yeah,
and the
and for
answer is
some
always it
people, one's gonna be better
depends.
than the other. Yeah.
It's always contextual. Like you could do studies in different areas, different people, whatever, and some people are going to prefer or do better with a frequent payment than a lump sum. We would ask people in bootstraps all the time, like, what did they think? We chose to do it weekly, actually. What did they think? Would they have preferred like lump sums or monthly or bigger amounts or whatever? And different people sometimes had different opinions. It really depended on how well off they were at the time. When one of the big takeaways I had is like when shit's hitting the fan, you need it more frequently, right? You need something to like help you make it through each week, right? But when you start to get comfortable, you start building a base. That's when people start saying, okay, I'm not watching it come in every week and taking 900 out of my 1,000 out so that, or whatever that was, 300 out of my 320 out to like spend on shit I need. I'm going to let it accrue for a while. Now I'm going to start thinking of it as like, this is for my kids' college fund someday. And so even within one person, their preference changed based on like their level of security at the moment.
This article on the Hill, Gen X may be the first to need a universal basic income after late career job loss. I hadn't really seen this argument before. That's really, it's relating to, like, you look back at the great financial crisis of 2008, and you saw that workers over age 50 experienced the highest rates of long-term joblessness. And they're like too young to retire, but too old to start all over. But at that point in time, a lot of them still had the ability to like fall back on pensions, that kind of retirement income. Whereas those who are Gen X, like, and I'm like an Xennial, born in '77, and we've seen the chart over and over again about how productivity decoupled from wages, like in '73 to '75. So like right at the time when Gen X was born, productivity decoupled, and the difference now is like they're like they've experienced an entire life of not having like the pensions, the possibility of like 401ks, but then like 401ks are an option that's like some people work at a place that does matching, and that's even an option. And then of course it's still an option to actually do that. So some people even have 401k, but they don't actually put anything into it. So Gen X is like the first generation where once they reach retirement age, not only do they not have pensions, but then like their 401ks are just going to be, some people have them, some people don't. They're not going to be as good as if they had pensions. And so already that's bad. But then what happens too if something else happens? Like what if automation causes like something similar to the great financial crisis? Then what? So it's a really interesting kind of argument to look at. Look, like generationally speaking, you can argue that other generations didn't necessarily like need basic income for their retirements, but then Gen X does. Like that is the first generation that actually needs universal basic income as part of their retirement plan, really.
I remember I was
Right
in
now
the,
would be good. Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
in the, I was like the last cohort of people. So I was an engineer out of college, and I did that for like a year before I gave it up to try to make movies. And my group of people that came in, it was like a big group on this like Lockheed Martin campus down in the Bay Area, in California. And we were the last cohort, the last year of people that had the option of a pension. So I was like building toward a pension that if I had stuck around for like 20 years at least, I would have had a pension, assuming it didn't get like whatever disintegrated somehow. It was a very easy choice, not only because I decided I didn't necessarily want to be an engineer, but because the way corporations generally work, especially government contractors, is like you're punished for sticking around and being loyal. You're like 2 to 3% raise every year, whereas the other guy who like jumps to another company and comes back in 5 years is your boss, regardless of how good you are at working. So yeah, it was a weird, poignant moment for me to be like, okay, this is the last chance I'll ever have to have a pension, and I'm turning it down. And so now a pension is not a thing anymore. But I could have had one if I'd have just stuck around there for 20 more years.
No, I mean, part of the reasoning for me for universal basic income also is just I think I'm going to need it when it comes to retirement. Like I just, yeah, I don't have a 401k. Well, I mean, recently I do, but like I don't have one like everyone else. Lots of people have one from working in their careers. I definitely don't. And so, Gen Z, like certainly millennials, like it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And I think that's a key argument actually is just making sure that UBI exists for retirement, even though we already expect Social Security upon retirement. It's not enough. We all know that it's not enough. It's even if we reform Social Security and like, boost it like big time, then you still have people not getting it.
I lost my train of thought. Oh, I wanted to say something about you, Scott, where like you were talking about how you don't have one.
Yeah.
And like a lot of times we get, or not a lot of times, but sometimes, and if we get bigger, I guess we'll get more of it. Of like, well, who's paying you to do this podcast? I've had it a few times before. Well, how much is George Soros paying for you to do this podcast? And the reality is, like, for many years, we've both kind of done it for free just because we care about the thing. But more so, I did it on projects where I felt like maybe someday it could pay off. One of the unspoken things of like what you did, Scott, where you basically fundraised the Patreon income of $1,000 a year and sort of making
Month.
or $1,000 a month, and we're making do with that is not banking stuff for your future. And in a way, that is, I think it's a really important solidaristic gesture that you've made. And that's one of the ways I've justified for myself, like taking so much risk and going so many years without like banking 401k or anything is like tying your fate to the rest of society rather than trying to get yours while you can.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
no stronger way to say that like I'm fucking committed to this. And I think that's pretty unquestionable for your
Like
commitment.
if people are wondering if there's some like rich person out there paying me or something, it's like what's my reward? What's my extrinsic motivation? Like, I mean, most of it is intrinsic motivation, but extrinsic motivation, it's all on the back end. Like I'm hoping for a UBI just like everyone else. Like I'm planning on that. So if we don't get that, I fail, and I'm actually hurt by that too, just like everybody else, because there's no backup. There's no extra like safety mechanism there for me. I'll fall just like everybody else.
It reminds me, so people ask all the time, like people who are, I have like a friend who's a prepper. I've got like another friend who's like every sort of conspiratorial, like every now and then they'll be like, you got to take a bunch of cash out of the bank, or you got to like have a bunch of food saved up or get some guns or whatever. Like, what are you going to do when the economy collapses? And my answer is just like, when the economy collapses, I'm going to die like you. I have no delusions of like, oh, I'm going to like have my homestead and defend it with my guns
Right.
and like start farming and rebuild civilization. That's just fantasy land. You're not going to have your like
Right.
5 acres in the woods and be okay when society collapses. Like
Yeah.
we are so dependent on society for every single thing we have. Like it's like, no, I would rather not delude myself that I can escape whatever fate is coming to everybody else. It's like, I better like get to work making sure that the fate that's coming to everybody is a good one as much as I can, because that is the fate that's coming to me. Even if I'm rich or what, like it doesn't, in the end, like we all get dragged in the same direction by the bigger tides.
It reminds me of like the hiding under the desks, that kind of stuff that we got with like during the Cold War, if the nuclear bomb goes off.
We must be ready every day, all the time, to do the right thing if the atomic bomb explodes. Duck and cover. This family knows what to do, just as your own family should. They know that even a thin cloth helps protect them. Even a newspaper can save you from a bad burn. But the most important thing of all is to duck and cover yourself, especially where your clothes do not cover you.
Remember what to do, friends. Now tell me right out loud. What are you supposed to do when you see the flash? Duck and cover. Duck and cover. Duck.
You're not going to save yourself by jumping under your desk when you with the nuclear explosion goes off. Instead, you should just put your efforts in to make sure that doesn't happen. Don't rely on jumping onto your desk.
Yeah. It's scary to be like, we watch all these movies about the people who survive the apocalypse or like build up. And it's like, I actually think I'd be in pretty good shape to survive longer than most because my wife, Dea, like lived in the mountains for 2 years and could like teach me how to like live off of mushrooms or something. But that's not my plan A.
Right. Yeah. If worst comes to worst, maybe there's some a mushroom eating ability in your future. But
Yeah.
maybe.
It's like, that's the worst possible scenario that should be prevented at all costs. And the other part too is like sometimes it's pretty unhinged from the reality of economies too. Like someone told me, you got to take at least $2,000 and have it in cash because when the economy collapses, you're going to want to have the cash. I'm like, wait, so if the economy collapses, I'm just going to like walk on down to the grocery store with my big pile of cash and buy some stuff?
Yeah.
Like cash won't work. If I don't get
I don't think our cell phones are going to work
if I don't get
either.
murdered for it on the way, it'll be because it's absolutely worthless. Like, why am I stockpiling something that will have no value in this scenario you described? It's like,
Well, what's interesting too, the only value that you would have is the value that other people see in you. So again, that just goes right back to society and interdependence,
Right.
where let's say, like if you want to be valuable in this like post-apocalyptic future where all the shit goes down, then, if you're someone who can make wine, you can make cheese, you can
Right.
make beer, like you can do these kinds of things that people like want to experience that kind of feel normal again, besides like the, woodworking and construction and, all these other great skills to have. That's the value that you can have. It's not like an object, you're not going to be valuable because you have like some collector's item or something.
Right. It's like, I'm just picturing myself walking down to the store with nobody has any money anywhere. And I'm walking in and for some reason, someone's still working behind the register. And I'm like, ha, look at this money I have. And I'll purchase these items, please.
It's like, no.
And they're
Can you
like,
make cheese? I'll trade you for cheese.
and if they're not polite to me, I'll say, can I speak to your manager?
All right, so I was just gonna wrap things up, but since Josh is gone, there's one other thing that we can fit in here and just talk about a bit before the final thing. And so that's Bernie. He did a video recently about AI could wipe out the working class. His committee in the Senate, they just put out like a big report about how much AI is going to impact, the economy and jobs and stuff. So this is him speaking about this, and I'm not going to play the whole thing. It's a 12-minute thing, but just this end part is where he prescribes his own opinions of how to potentially respond to it.
Wait.
So the whole thing before this is the problem. It's AI is going to eliminate jobs. These are all the people that believe it's going to eliminate jobs, like all that kind of stuff.
I want to just set the stakes a little. I tried very hard for years to get Bernie through different sources to mention UBI. So if he does, I'll be very happy.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Hoping for UBI.
The answers. But here are just a few ideas as to how, in my view, the advances in technology can benefit ordinary Americans and not just multi-billionaires. First, we must move to a 32-hour work week with no loss in pay.
I agree. That'd be great.
Today, American workers are 400% more productive than they were in the 1940s when the 40-hour work week was first established. Artificial intelligence and robotics will greatly increase that productivity. Workers must benefit from that increased output through a shorter work week. A 32-hour work week with no loss in pay would be a major step forward in improving the quality of life for millions of Americans. Second,
before that goes on too, I just want to mention that we don't even need AI for the 4-day week. Like there have been experiments just like UBI all around the world testing out 4-day work week and how that impacts productivity. And over and over and over again, actually productivity does not go down and it can go up. Everyone is very happy with it. So we can do that now. We don't need AI to do that. We can do that now.
Weren't they predicting decades ago that we'd be down to like a 15-hour work week by now just because of market forces and trends? And they forgot, oops, what if the ownership class just gobbles up all that extra money and we have to just keep working just as much for less. Yeah.
Yeah.
We must require large corporations to allow workers to elect at least 45% of the members of their boards of directors, similar to what already takes place in Germany. Workers need a seat at the table to best determine how AI is used in their companies. If Tesla workers were on their corporate board, I doubt very much that they would be rewarding Elon Musk with $1 trillion pay package. Third, we must greatly increase profit sharing.
Okay, so say anything about that one? I think it's pretty weak. Like, sure, there's nothing. Germany shows that works well, but like, so what if a company has more union members on their board? Like, that company is either going to automate just as much as they would otherwise because that's what the competition like requires, or they're not going to automate and they're choose to like keep their employees and stuff, in which case they may lose out to other companies who are actually automating. So I have a problem with this being like he's still very old school worker where, you know, there's he really wants to like keep people working and just somehow increasing their share.
At our nation's largest corporations. In my view, workers should receive at least 20% of the stock in companies they work for. Corporate profits should not just be going to enrich wealthy stockholders and the billionaires who own them. Fourth,
Wait, that's also kind of
we
weak.
need to
If
substantially
wait,
expand
pause.
the
Yeah.
Like if you can run a company with 10 employees as opposed to 1,000 or whatever, that's an extreme
Right.
example, then they're just another little group of shareholders. They are putting in sweat equity as well, but it's still like, you know, gobbling up a lot. It's just,
Right.
it's
If
all
you've
it's
got
all assuming that everyone's going to have the ability to get a job, really. And if that's not true, then this all sort of falls apart.
Yeah, it would be great to be in a company and receive 20% of the profits of that company via like, you know, dividends and stuff from it. Great. But, you know, that also necessitates that company continue to exist where that company can actually be obliterated by AI too. So then, yeah, there's still a small number of people who are benefiting. It's just not as bad as it would be, you know, like instead of 0.001% of the population like owning everything, it would be 0.01%, you know, like that's better, but it's not really a solution. You're not actually spreading the benefits of technology to everybody. It's just to specific workers.
Yeah.
concept of employee ownership in America. When workers own their own businesses and are more involved in the decision-making processes, they will make choices that benefit everyone in the company, not just the people on top. Fifth, instead of providing billions of dollars in tax breaks to companies that are throwing workers out on the street and replacing them with new technologies, we should enact a robot tax on large corporations and use that revenue to improve the lives of workers who have been harmed in this transition.
So robot tax, that's his final answer. He did 5 solutions. Base income was not one of them, and he ended with a robot tax.
The problem is it's just like the things that he would say before. And I love Bernie. I love so much about Bernie, but he's always had this as a blind spot. And whenever I see him or anyone come out with like nobody working full time should starve in America, it's like,
Yeah.
Why did you have to say working full time? And are you implying that people who aren't working full time should starve sometimes? Or like, why can't you just say nobody should starve in America? Period.
Yeah, half the country are non-workers.
Because
they're kids, they're seniors, they're disabled, they're doing unpaid work. Like, why shouldn't they benefit?
Right. And the threat of AI is that number is about to go up a lot. So having a worldview that we need to make sure all of our working people are taken care of, it's like that's a shrinking population, and the people who aren't working is a growing population. And if you got nothing for them, then we're going to have problems.
Yeah, he didn't say it in as many words, but it's almost like he's saying AI is this big problem. It's going to put a lot of people out of work. We should not do AI and not put people out of work. You know?
Right. That's sort of what's implied, because it's like,
Yeah.
if you're protecting workers as a response, if you're like giving more rewards to workers as a response to the fact that jobs are going away, then you're ignoring the big elephant in the room, that like the problem is that there aren't like we can't be workers. So like,
Yeah, like
doing things for workers doesn't solve my problem.
he envisions the company like, say, Tesla, who like they automate more and more. Let's do Amazon instead. But imagine a company like Amazon, because they're just doing more and more robots, and we know that eventually Amazon is going to be just mostly fully automated. They're going to have the pickers. They're going to have everything done by robots. And the way he looks at this is that every Amazon employee who is currently employed should instead just get as much money as they are now for less and less hours of work. So, they could actually be working 5 hours a week and getting, $50K a year, or whatever it is that these people working in these warehouses are getting. And then maybe they'll get like a dividend too from the automation, so that the robots are working for them. So maybe the workers working for Amazon, maybe they start earning like $300,000 a year, $400,000 a year, and they're working 4 hours a week or whatever. There's no one is getting fired, no one is getting laid off from Amazon at all, despite all these robots, and they're just paying people at the company more and more money for fewer and fewer hours of work. That's what I think he thinks is the good, realistic option. And I just don't see that as realistic at all.
Right. I see it playing into the hands of like basically the narratives that these corporations want, right? I remember like there being some study or argument that like if trucking were automated, then the extra profit that these companies get from could actually just go towards continuing to pay all the salaries of the truck drivers, and they don't have to do anything, right? So that indicates that there's a lot of extra money to go around. And so what this looks like to me, narrative wise, for like an Amazon, is you go from like 1,000 employees at a plant to 100, but now those 100 employees, instead of 1,000 employees getting paid minimum wage, you got 100 employees getting paid 100K a year, like 6 figures, doing okay. And all of a sudden, Amazon has this opportunity to say, look how well we pay our employees and how well we treat people. And what gets forgotten is the 900 people who are now jobless, right? And so, and
Yeah.
I'm not even suggesting it should be Amazon's responsibility to not automate, to keep giving everyone jobs. That might not be what needs to happen. I think punting that responsibility onto Amazon is the problem. I think our government needs to, tax Amazon and make sure all those 900 people are being supported while they figure out what's next.
Yeah. And even when you say tax Amazon, I prefer that too. Like, we should be taxing Amazon. We should be taxing corporations, specifically trying to target robots. Like, the reason to do that is to actually disincentivize the use of robots, and I don't think we should be doing that. Like, I actually do think that we can actually benefit from this increased productivity from automation. We just have to make sure to actually do that.
Right. If they've got the same level, like, you don't have to tax the robots, you can just tax the revenue. And if they've got the same amount of revenue with 1/10 the workforce, you can tax it at a much higher rate and everyone's still doing good. And then now that money can go out to society in general, because the shareholders and employees don't need to claim so much of it, because they're a much leaner organization.
Yeah, like it's just frustrating with Bernie, where, I mean, I know he's so old school, and that can be great in many ways, but in this way, I miss when he was actually talking about UBI in response to automation. He just decided not to do that anymore. I mean, maybe he'll turn around and start to talk about it again. I don't know. But the fact that he just did this big report, and then this is him talking about this, I think 32-hour weeks is what he's leaning into. He's not even talking about job guarantee anymore either. He's talking about like 32-hour weeks and kind of German unionization. Frustrating. Like, I want everyone to benefit. Every single person. Robots should work for every single person, and he's looking at it as robots should benefit workers.
Right. And it's just sort of like a disconnect there of like a logical leap is missing. Like, so he even said like all the workers who are harmed. Like, what about the people who didn't
Right.
get to
Yeah,
get
he
the
did say
job?
that.
What about the people who lost their jobs? So technically they're no longer workers. So like there's not really clarity on like how you use that robot tax to help the workers who are harmed, because who are they, So
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, the final thing I just wanted to end with was Jane Goodall, and I feel her final message to the world is a good final message for us this week. So I'll just end it even after this. I just like even talking about it afterwards. It just like, I don't know. You can't outdo this.
we're gonna give her the last words. All right, everyone.
Give her the last
so
words.
This is gonna be our goodbye. Right now, no more color commentary. Jane, take it away.
And I will just say too that I really want people just think about this. When I heard this, it's like she is UBI speaking to us. Like, if UBI were a person, it would be her speaking these words to all of us. I just wanted people to consider it from that perspective, right? And we will see you all next time.
In the place where I am now, I look back over my life. I look back at the world I've left behind. What message do I want to leave? I want to make sure that you all understand that each and every one of you has a role to play. You may not know it, you may not find it, but your life matters, and you are here for a reason. And I just hope that that reason will become apparent as you live through your life. I want you to know that whether or not you find that role that you're supposed to play, your life does matter, and that every single day you live, you make a difference in the world, and you get to choose the difference that you make. I want you to understand that we are part of the natural world, and even today, where the planet is dark, there still is hope. Don't lose hope. If you lose hope, you become apathetic and do nothing. And if you want to save what is still beautiful in this world, if you want to save the planet for the future generations, your grandchildren, their grandchildren, then think about the actions you take each day, because multiplied a million, a billion times, even small actions will make for great change. I just hope that you understand that this life on planet Earth isn't the end. I believe, and now I know, that there is life beyond death, that consciousness survives. I can't tell you from where I am secrets that are not mine to share. I can't tell you what you will find when you leave planet Earth. But I want you to know that your life on planet Earth will make some difference in the kind of life that you find after you die. Above all, I want you to think about the fact that we are part, when we're on planet Earth, we are part of Mother Nature. We depend on Mother Nature for clean air, for water, for food, for clothing, for everything. And as we destroy one ecosystem after another, as we create worse climate change, worse loss of diversity, we have to do everything in our power to make the world a better place for the children alive today and for those that will follow. You have it in your power to make a difference. Don't give up. There is a future for you. Do your best while you're still on this beautiful planet Earth that I look down upon from where I am now. God bless you all.